there's only plastic chairs and concrete floor are the only options that people have to sleep, if they can sit down at all. The rooms are filthy, they're not really cleaned, they're not receiving enough food or water, they don't receive medical care for the most part. There's not people, there's not prescription medication being provided to folks that need it.
You want to see what real independent journalism funded by the people for the people looks like?
You ever heard a story like this in America?
You're looking at it.
Congratulations for always being somewhere where mainstream media is not.
Flint, Michigan.
See you in Nevada.
Thanks to people like you, we could get the truth. Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
You are the man. I'm glad you're here.
For as low as 16 cents a day, you'll keep us on the ground, covering the important stories the corporate media covers up.
JT Cestkowski for Status Coup. One of the stories that we have been following as part of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown and occupation of the city of Chicago has been conditions inside of the Broadview, Illinois ICE detention facility. This is a central hub from which ICE and the other Department of Homeland Security agents are operating in Chicago, and where people are being held for days at a time inside in some pretty inhumane conditions that we have heard described. But a federal judge recently sided with the Illinois ACLU, as well as a coalition of other groups who brought a lawsuit challenging those conditions and representing some of the people being held inside of that facility. The judge has ordered that the federal government has to make some pretty basic accommodations for people, things that you would think on the face would be just common human decency, providing beds, providing food, providing access to attorneys, but things that were not necessarily guaranteed to people who are being picked up on warrantless arrests around the Chicago area. I am lucky enough to be joined by Katie Hickey, who is an attorney with the ACLU of Illinois. And Katie, what was the reaction at ACLU of Illinois and among the other coalition partners in this lawsuit? And more importantly, some of the people that you're representing when that judge issued the ruling saying that the Trump administration had to provide some of these basic necessities and accommodations for people being held in that facility.
We were thrilled. It was really great to hear Judge Gettleman listen to the testimony of our witnesses, read the declarations that we submitted when we filed this lawsuit by people who'd been held at Broadview and attorneys who've tried to access their clients at Broadview, and recognize that the situation is disturbing and that nobody should be held under these conditions. I think he said, none of us want to see people treated that way. Everybody can admit that. And it was really great that now the government is going to be taking these steps towards improving the situation there through the temporary restraining order that Judge Gettleman issued. And our clients, our two named plaintiffs actually, were released later last week after the TRO was issued through habeas petitions. So they're back with their families. We're very, very glad about that. And just happy that they're home.
Let's back up a little bit and actually establish what some of the conditions inside of Broadview were like. What were you hearing from people being held inside, like your clients, about the conditions that they were facing under federal custody?
Yeah, the conditions, it's a long list of concerning conditions inside Broadview. There's severe overcrowding to begin with, which leads to a lot of the other conditions that we heard described, which is really difficult sleeping conditions. There's only plastic chairs and concrete floor are the only options that people have to sleep, if they can sit down at all. The rooms are filthy, they're not really cleaned, they're not receiving enough food or water, they don't receive medical care for the most part. There's not people, there's not prescription medication being provided to folks that need it. And there's an almost total blackout on attorney access, which is a really important facet of our case, because this is a really critical point for people when they're at Broadview before they're shipped off to a detention center, maybe across the country, or even deported away from their families. It's really critical that people are able to speak to attorneys on a confidential basis while they're at Broadview, and that just wasn't happening. Most people couldn't speak to attorneys at all, and the few that couldn't have private conversations, couldn't have long enough conversations to receive meaningful legal advice. And all of this is bad on its own, but especially bad when you consider that we've also been hearing again and again of a practice where officers are demanding that detainees sign forms that will waive their rights to an immigration hearing and agree to leave the country away from their families and homes. And these forms are not translated. People don't understand them. They're not able to consult with lawyers about them before they sign. And sometimes people are being threatened to sign, coerced to sign. So it's just, you know, when you consider that practice in light of the denial of attorney access, it's just a really serious situation inside Broadview.
For people who have been coerced into signing away some of their rights, and I remember from the lawsuit that in some cases people are being told to sign documents by federal agents, documents that they don't understand, either that be because just don't understand the material that's in front of them, or in many cases that English not being the first language or a language that they know at all. When somebody is put in that position of having to sign one of those documents, do they have any legal recourse after the fact? I mean, once they do get access to an attorney who is able to point out to them, hey, do you know what you just did? Do they have any hope, or are they just now at the mercy of the system?
Well, I think it depends on the individual case. And there are, cases before the courts right now where folks are challenging these forms that they signed without knowing what they were signing. It wasn't a voluntary or knowing waiver of their right to appear before an immigration judge. But sometimes people are already there. We had testimony from a witness last week who is a mother who was already in Honduras before she learned what the consequences were of signing these forms. She thought she could come back after a shorter period of time and learn that there's actually a 10-year bar to returning. And she has kids here. She won't see her kids for another 10 years. So, at some point people have already left and it's too late for them to receive meaningful legal recourse.
What's the emotional damage on some of these people being held inside when they're facing things like that, like not being able to see your kids for a decade? I mean, I'm a new father. That certainly hits home with me right now, like the prospect of not being able to see my daughter until she was 10 years old and missing her entire adolescence is that's emotionally moving to me. I can't imagine the devastation that people are feeling. What are some of the emotions that either your clients or folks like them are dealing with right now?
It is devastating. And that same mother, when she testified over video through in our hearing, because she obviously isn't in the country anymore, and she broke down when she's talking about the fact that I think her 12-year-old son, she's not going to be able to see him until he's 22, which she didn't know when she was agreeing to leave the country. And it's also important to understand that she was held at Broadview for a couple days under just really cruel conditions. And so by the time she signed, she was, she just wanted to get out of there. So it's just really, really devastating. And I think Judge Gettleman and others in the courtroom recognize that when they're hearing this kind of testimony from people, when they feel they're not going to see their family again for a very long time.
A magistrate judge is, I think, as we're speaking, touring the Broadview, Illinois ICE detention facility in part to get a look at some of those conditions inside. You're not there right now, you're here. So I won't ask you to talk about what it looks like inside right now. The federal government has maintained, or has at least said that they are working to comply with Judge Gettleman's order. What will attorneys for ACLU, for some of these other clients, be looking for as part of this tour? What is that magistrate judge looking for? What are the telltale signs that you're looking for to make sure that the federal government is complying with Judge Gettleman's order?
So, yeah, I think the key thing that folks will be looking for is whether the government is complying with the terms of the TRO, what kind of bedding situation detainees are receiving inside the holding cells, what kind of food they're receiving. It will be really interesting to see, because for a long time, no one has been inside. There's part of our case is based on the fact that attorneys can't get inside to see their clients. So it's really important for us to get inside and actually see what the facility is like, because we've heard from dozens and dozens of people about the terrible conditions inside, but it's important for us to see for ourselves and for Judge McNally to see, so that that will inform the rest of the case.
The federal government has said that beds are on order, that it is complying with many areas of the temporary restraining order. But I know from following this case that attorney access, as you've referenced, has continued to be an issue. In what ways has the federal government not yet met the TRO? And is there any signs of improvement that folks inside that facility are able to get legal representation?
Yes, we've heard reports from attorneys as recently as earlier this week, over the weekend, that they're still not able to access their clients inside Broadview. The phone numbers and email addresses that have been offered by the government are not getting them access to their clients. We've also heard that some have been able to access clients, so we're hopeful that the situation is improving and that it's just a matter of getting these phone lines and email addresses up and running. But obviously, there needs to be serious change so that attorneys can access their clients promptly and have meaningful legal conversations with their clients while they're at Broadview.
Has the federal government shown any good faith in trying to get these, trying to meet these conditions? I mean, it seems ridiculous in the first place, just from my observations, that this even needed to be an order in the first place, that you are providing people with food and beds, especially if you're holding them for multiple days inside of this facility. But has the federal government shown, have they been a willing and good faith actor here since appearing in front of Judge Gettleman?
I think that's right. It should not take an order to require that the conditions inside Broadview comply with basic constitutional standards. And I think the inspection today will hopefully tell us about whether the conditions ordered by Judge Gettleman are being complied with, and we'll learn more about what's actually happening there now that the TRO has been issued as the weeks go on before we have a preliminary injunction hearing next month.
The reporting is that Gregory Bavino, the Border Patrol commander who's been leading much of the Trump administration's crackdown in and around Chicago, has left along with many of the agents that he was commanding, though certainly ICE and the other Department of Homeland Security offices will still have a presence there in Chicago. But does the departure of these agents, does the drawing down of Operation Midway Blitz in any way change the work, the advocacy that ACLU of Illinois is doing?
You know, our priority is that the conditions inside Broadview are up to constitutional standards, no matter how many people are arrested, no matter how many people are being picked up in Operation Midway Blitz. So I'm hopeful that it will lead to an improvement in conditions in Broadview, but it will, time will tell about what actually happens.
In a different case, a different federal judge just issued a ruling yesterday that is requiring more than 600 detainees as part of Operation Midway Blitz, and I think even extending before Operation Midway Blitz actually got underway, that many of these detainees, people who are just being picked up off the street on warrantless arrests, need to be given the opportunity to bond out of federal custody. Does that in any way impact the case that you are bringing, or have any beneficial impacts to your clients?
I'm not sure how that will impact our case. I'm thrilled about that decision. Our team at the ACLU and the folks at NIJC, this is a really important, great victory for immigrants in the Chicago area. So it is great for our clients. It's great for our community in general. I'm not sure exactly how it will impact the conditions inside Broadview, but it's a big win.
Certainly. And it was something that got met with a lot of joy from folks in the community there around Chicago. How much are you able to follow all of these legal wranglings that are happening? Because it just seems like the federal government is losing case after case right now, or at least taking loss after loss in federal court. On appeal, they seem to be gaining at least a few wins here and there. We'll see how the National Guard deployment fares in front of the Supreme Court. But with so much happening in the legal world around what is happening there in Chicago, I mean, are you optimistic right now? I mean, I'm just trying to get your sense of what the future holds for Chicago, given the wins that we've been seeing recently for groups like ACLU of Illinois.
Yeah, I think I am feeling much more optimistic. The last couple weeks have been great. Don't get me wrong, it is a very serious and bad situation in many ways, but we had our TRO in this Broadview conditions case. We had a preliminary injunction entered in the Chicago Headline Club case. We have this wonderful Castellano Nava order. It's really great to see judges recognize that everyone has constitutional rights, no matter whether they're a citizen or not. And it's been, definitely feeling a lot more optimistic after the last few weeks.
The other thing that I've been tracking is sort of the shell game that the federal government has been playing with some of these detainees, just in where they are physically being held. A lot of times these folks are taken to Broadview detention facility where your lawsuit is focused, but then after being held there for some days, they might be transferred to who knows where. Certainly many are being sent out of state. I just wrapped up an interview with a group in Missouri that is tracking nearly 100 folks from the Chicago area who have been sent to southern Missouri. Near where I live here in Wisconsin, there are a couple of jails that are taking in folks from Illinois, and that is making it very difficult for these families to know where their loved one is, get them the medications that they might be needing. I'm wondering, are you seeing any of those difficulties with any of your clients or the people that you're working with, and what are some of the frustrations and difficulties that shell game presents when just trying to get people access to, the legal resources that they need right now?
Yeah, that's a really important part of our case, actually. We had immigration attorneys who testified and said, it's so important that they speak to people at Broadview, because by the time that they can get in touch with someone, they might be in a detention facility in Texas. And it's a lot harder for an attorney in Chicago to get in touch with a client when they're already across the country, get signatures from a client, for a family to get in touch with their family member who's detained, and if they don't already have legal counsel, find an attorney for them where they're detained across the country. And even just in our case, it's been just a mess trying to track where folks are being brought across the country. So it's really challenging, and it makes it all the more important that while people are in Broadview, in Chicago, near their families, in their own communities, to get them legal counsel while they're there.
If it's found that the federal government, or if in the perspective of ACLU of Illinois, or maybe one of your partner organizations in this lawsuit, if you deem that the federal government is not adequately meeting the requirements spelled out in the temporary restraining order, improving conditions there inside of Broadview, what recourse is left to you? What can you do to try and continue to fight for people who are being held there on warrantless arrests?
Yeah, I mean, it's a court order, so they are required to comply with Judge Gettleman's order. And so if they're not, we will be taking all steps to ensure that they do start complying. And we will continue fighting for our clients until the conditions at Broadview improve.
We've certainly seen the Trump administration try to paint with a very broad brush about the people that it is picking up, saying that they are criminals, certainly calling out some examples without really providing a whole lot of verifiable details about some of these people that they are arresting, claiming that they are gang members or wanted for horrific crimes. The people that you are representing or that you are talking to as part of this lawsuit, can you just paint us a picture for who they are as people? Are they the criminals the Trump administration makes them out to be?
Yeah, no, they're not. It's just not accurate that the administration is only picking up folks with serious criminal records. They're picking up parents, they're picking up people that have been in the United States for decades. One of our clients, one of our named plaintiffs in our lawsuit, has been here since he was a kid. He went to high school here. He went to college here. He works here. He has a family here, and was picked up anyway. So, it's people that that have roots here in Chicago, and this is their home. Their families are here. It's not accurate that Broadview is filled with the people, that the violent criminals that the administration wants to get off the streets.
Is there anything else you want to add while you have the platform, or anything that I haven't asked about that you think is important to call out or is being undercovered about this lawsuit, about this story, about what is happening in broad daylight in the Chicagoland area right now? People being picked up off the streets on warrantless arrests and held in abhorrent conditions.
I don't think so. I mean, I really appreciate you covering this. There's been a lot of attention about what's gone on out in the open outside of the Broadview facility, rightfully so. Um, and it's taken longer to uncover exactly what's going on inside the facility, partly because the nature of the crisis inside the facility is that people are cut off from the outside world. So I think it's important that everyone is paying attention to what goes on inside. And so I appreciate you covering this and folks following this lawsuit.